Hello, welcome to Season 1, Episode 2 of Examining Fictional Heroes and the Authors Behind Them. This episode is titled, Never Ready, simply because the concept of being ready or having all your ducks in a row before you start something really causes a lot of people, including myself, to put things off further than they need to. On my last episode, I discussed my reasonings behind making this video series. Recently, someone I follow on social media had made a post wondering what type of projects that any of his followers were undertaking. I mentioned that I was going to try to make a video series like this, and I also mentioned at the time that I might be interested in actually doing some voice work, possibly at some day. He asked if I had any examples of that, which at the time I did not. Only now am I making any examples of voice work. However, I did mention to him a couple of quotes from this book, Education of a Wandering Man by Louis L'Amour, which was a step in the right direction, actually. He loves Louis L'Amour. So, these excerpts go as follows. And this was written at about a time before he began to become known as an author. I let the word get around that I was open for speaking engagements, knowing that sooner or later I would be challenged and have to make good. That was a beginning. And many years ago, but I firmly believe that if I could become a speaker, anybody can do anything if he or she wants to enough. Of course, if one is to speak, one must have something worth saying and say it intelligently. The important lesson to be learned is that one's principal enemy in such cases is oneself. At one time or another, nearly everyone will have to stand up and sell his bill of goods, whatever it may be. Finally, this excerpt. Well, two more. After the first lecture, I spoke as often as possible at schools, colleges, county libraries, and the Farmers Union, simply because I wanted to get better at it and because I knew a time would come when it would be important to me to speak well. It was another aspect of my education, and one of the most important. Again, as with writing, one never knows enough, and one is never good enough. That's what causes a lot of hesitation, and why we're talking about never being ready. Another aspect of what I'm doing here is also taken from this book. Although some of what I was learning might someday be of use, I was not studying for that purpose. But again, simply because I wished to know. Now, obviously, I haven't been studying and reading all these books over the years with the idea of making a series out of it. I did it for my own pleasure. However, I decided that it was worth sharing as much as possible, especially in this day and age. Next, I want to share a couple of excerpts from this book, Yes, You Can, by Art Linkletter. Now, at this point, he had just learned that something that he had wanted to become involved with for years was no longer around. One of my greatest frustrations when I reached college age was realizing that the day of the Chautauqua circuit had passed. I figured I was living in the wrong era and sadly began to cast about for another career. See, he had become so taken with these people and what they did. This is what he wanted to do. But it was gone by the time he was out of high school. It was over. Later on, he says, in a way, my career has come full circle, and I'm now doing what I originally set out to do as a youngster. I've created my own Chautauqua circuit as I deliver addresses at colleges, town halls, conventions, and positive thinking rallies. And because I now have a wealth of varied experience to draw upon, I know I'm a much better lecturer than I might ever have been had I been able to embark on that calling fresh out of college. So what he took first as a bitter disappointment worked out for him in the long run. The final quote that I'm going to read to you is from someone that many of you will possibly know better than either of these guys, Hugh Laurie, an actor. It's a terrible thing, I think, in life to wait until you're ready. I have the feeling now that actually no one is ever ready to do anything. There is almost no such thing as ready. There is only now. And you may as well do it now. Generally speaking, now is as good a time as any. So, what I hope to impart to you in this episode is, if you have a project, if you have something you are trying to do, you cannot necessarily put it off. Things are never going to be perfect. Without going into great detail, as I said, my voice is still not where it usually is. I just decided not to put this off any longer. So, I hope you get something out of this. If you do, I would appreciate it if you would subscribe, if you would hit the like button or even the dislike. Any comments or criticisms are welcome. I hope to address those at a future point. Good night.